Let's not record just yet.
Thanks, Peter. Always a pleasure working with you.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, all of the work behind the scenes is all Peter. So thank you. So, our topic today, and this, I want to say this is, I think, Peter, is our 10th webinar, maybe something like that.
Maybe even more than that.
Yeah. So we do these monthly. So, keep an eye on it. We also do the recordings. You can't make it. A lot of people, we have about generally 100 people sign up, and then we'll have like 8 show up, but we record and we send those out. So anyway, we're providing information, and we think that's really important. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about ourselves, because my boss makes me do that. A short presentation, and we're going to talk about the IT maturity model, functional versus technical support, big I, little t, and some other things. I think I'll pull it all together for you. The whole idea really with this webinar is that the support of IT in a company has changed dramatically in the last 3 years. So I'm just reporting what we're seeing, being out in the field, being out, talking with people and letting people know. So some of you may be IT providers. And at the end, if you want to, talk about your perception of this or how things are going in your world, please, we'll have time at the end for questions. So our motivation, and I go through this because I think it's our job and the job of all IT providers to educate and provide information to companies to protect them. So we provide a lot of hours and hours of complimentary services around cybersecurity. We think that, companies like us or you, if you have the expertise, should be helping other companies protect themselves from international actors, bad actors. And so anyway, we're pretty committed to this. We're so committed, in fact, that we're actually certified ourselves as an MSP Overwatch certification, which gives us a TISC 2020 certified, trusted kind of provider. So we take cybersecurity very personally and throughout our culture. So I'm just saying that just to let you know that we're not just talking. So the first thing I want to start with, and maybe you know this, but I think it's interesting because when you talk about what you do for IT support, it's like, what do the experts say? What's the gold standard? And so Gartner, heard of them, I'm sure you have, IT consultants, ITIL, CMMC, and others all have agreed on this. It's weird. And I don't know that they work together, agree on it, but they actually all have 5 degrees of IT maturity model. And so you can see that it goes from reactive, and we remember that. I mean, a lot of companies have moved beyond that, but it used to be you had an IT person, and when you had a problem, they came running, and that was it. Then things moved on to having a systematic approach to solving known issues and dealing with daily tasks. So we got a little better at it. Then proactivity came into place, right? And so you had to have repetitive tasks that made things better. In other words, you didn't wait for problems. You took the initiative to fix things before they became problems. And then the 4th level, and like I said, all these organizations agree about it, so we follow this, but tracking and managing against service level agreements. That means, okay, how accountable do we need to be? And what are the expectations around performance, because when a management doesn't always know what IT people do, so they've leaned away from this. But when an IT organization can be accountable to the management organization in a nice series of expectations, things really move up the maturity model. And then last is achieving IT operational excellence and taking a strategic role in driving business innovation. In other words, knowing that things are good the way they are, but what can we do to make things better? So, and notice down at the bottom, we talk about risk level. So obviously the risk level here is high against business continuity and cybersecurity and interruptions and all those kinds of things. Whereas you move up the IT maturity model, your risk goes down. I think that's pretty obvious. Okay, so I want to kind of take a way to say, how does the IT maturity model in cybersecurity, how do they come together? So this is a little self-evident because this is how we do it, but we feel like this is one way that companies can do it, whether they do it with us or not. And that is in the first month taking over a company and their IT support, we do onboarding, documentation, we put in remote management, we put in ticketing workflow, we put in all the protections that you need with Office 365. Then month 2, we verify the disaster risk because we've been in there long enough to understand it. We put in the endpoint detection. We put in our security foundation management. Companies may already have that, but we refine it, we put it in, we manage it. And then last, we do the security awareness campaign, vulnerability assessments, continual improvement, and get to lifecycle management and zero trust. Now, is this completely get you to level 5? It's pretty close in a short amount of time. So this is very, very doable. So if you are in a reactive or in the approach of IT management maturity, that you're not quite there yet, you can get there, and you can get there in a hurry. All right, next concept, and this is me playing games with words or letters, actually. I talk about big I, little t. So it used to be big T, little I, in my opinion. And I've been in the IT support and management for decades. And we spent all of our time on the technology. I mean, you all remember, server rooms and servers pulled apart and memory sticks going in and cables and stacks of blinking boxes. So we needed people on site right there at a moment's notice who could rack, stack, and fix all of these little blinking boxes. But my contention is that these rooms and that whole scenario of having people walking by looking in the server room asking, hey, when are we going to be up? Hey, what's going on? Are going to be over. I mean, they're going to be like to modern or future workers, they're going to be like corded phones, or what I like to say is, ashtrays in the conference room. I mean, these will be things that aren't even imaginable to people because it's going away. Times have really changed, and especially in the past 3 years, especially, when we talk about IT infrastructure. The reason is why. Okay, why? First of all, COVID. I mean, companies talked about remote workers, but nobody would pull the trigger. Well, COVID pulled it for us. Servers to the cloud. It's like everybody's using the cloud. It's like those servers are moving out of the closet in a hurry. I mean, if you still have them in there, it's like they probably won't be there long. I mean, there are exceptions in certain types of businesses, but for the most part, wireless everywhere. So all of that wiring and switching gear and all that kind of stuff is like, I mean, it's still there, but it's certainly not as important. applications to the cloud. It's like not only did the servers go to the cloud, but the servers might have been left behind for whatever reason because the applications have already moved to the cloud. A good example of that is Office 365, Exchange, email, all those things. They used to be in your server room. Even though you might have a server in your room, those are probably in the cloud. Another one is, I looked at the statistics for what are people buying in terms of computers, and it's kind of all over the board. And you know how those statistics are. It depends on what company is talking, whether it's a laptop company or somebody else. But it's 3-to-1 laptops, and that was a COVID thing. It's like nobody is doing desktops anymore. Mobile apps. There are huge fleets of people who don't even use quote computers. They're all mobile. They do mobile apps, right? They're out in the field, they're working, they're doing mobile. And then of course, remote control. It's like everybody gets that now, that somebody somewhere else can take control of your mouse and keyboard and do just fine. Could be a colleague running your spreadsheet, showing you what the changes need to be, or it could be a technician who is trying to fix your computer. So what's that mean for technology staffing? Well, do we really need a whole lot of network engineering anymore? In most companies, between, I would say 150 people and down, always had to have a network engineer. It was like, oh, we're going to upgrade the server next year. We got to do all these different things, And now, is that really going to happen moving forward? On-site user support. Well, we talked about remote control, and do they have to be on-site? I mean, really? 95% of the time, probably not. So then internal projects. This was a big deal for companies. And you remember, it's like, okay, the server's going to be down. And it's like over the weekend, you'd have a whole team of your people coming in and, replacing PCs or replacing blinking boxes. Those kind of things are not really happening anymore. So maintaining a server closet was like, that was a really big deal. It's like we have to, add in a whole new blinking box, and as things have gone to the cloud, we're not doing that. And, the screwdrivers is a joke, but I remember, having to open a computer and change out the yada yada mother, whatever, memory, add more memory. I mean, like who's doing that? Who opens a laptop, right? And upgrades. It's like all the upgrades now have kind of disappeared. I mean, it used to be a major project to upgrade an Exchange server for email, right? Now, that's just happening somewhere else, and you don't have a lot to do with it. So my point really with big I, little t, is the technology support is shrinking, right? The T is getting smaller and the I is getting bigger. So moving along, let's talk about business applications, right? So some of the recent things that have been happening is that Office 365. I can't remember the last time I ran into a client or prospect who did not have Office 365. 3 years ago, that wasn't true. I mean, they had, desktop applications, Exchange in the server room, or maybe hosted in a data center, but now they have Office 365 licenses, and most people underutilize that. Some aren't even using SharePoint. Some aren't using Teams, and Teams is not just an alternative to Zoom. Teams is pretty cool if you look into it, integrating that with SharePoint. Some people still, want to have their the shared drive where you go in, it's hierarchical, right? You click into folders. There are actually, I counted 20 applications that you get when you buy Office 365, and a lot of them could be useful in an organization if they just look into it. So anyway, business intelligence, and that has to do with data. So no matter what systems you're using, maybe you're using SharePoint, maybe you're using, I don't know, your accounting system, your CRM, Salesforce or whatever. There is a big push towards business intelligence and understanding big data and how it is that you're using the data compared to everybody else that's using the data. Are you doing things effectively? You know, cloud data integrations. There was a time when all of the systems you used, especially your accounting system, your PR system, your CRM system, maybe you have a production system, probably had another thing that was unique to your industry. Those were all on your servers. So you could do integrations between them because they used, you know, common technology for a database, which was usually Microsoft SQL, right? So now, let's say you're using Salesforce, that's in the cloud. Let's say you're using QuickBooks, maybe not QuickBooks, maybe Microsoft Dynamics for your accounting and operations. Maybe you're using ADP for your payroll and HR. So now you have to figure out how to get the data in between those systems because they're not all in your closet. So data integrations is really big. And there are a lot of ways to do that are coming forward. Cyber crimes, I'm going to talk about cybersecurity till you're bored with it. But as you know that, you know, all of these applications are vulnerable. Not just your network, not just your email, but all of your cloud applications as well. Freelancing has gotten huge. I mean, we have what, Upwork, if you've heard of them, Toptal, Fiverr, you know, all these companies where you can get unique services, technical services from people without having to hire them. And they don't even need to be anywhere near your office. A very, very popular trend, right? So if you have a particular application that you're using and you need it to talk to something else, it's pretty easy to find an expert on one of these sites. Regulations. You know, the first regulation that people are really facing is cyber insurance. We're inundated with companies who need to start dealing with the regulations of their cyber insurance companies, all the things that they're asking for, multi-factor authentication, endpoint detection response, you know, all these different things, you know, employee education. So all those are new. I mean, it's only a couple of years ago that you could fake it on a cyber insurance application. Those days are gone. And we've talked about that extensively in previous webinars if you're interested. So what does this mean for technology staffing? Well, you need training for employees, whether it's on cybersecurity, how to use teams in an integration, how to develop a team and communicate, you know, all these different things. Your people need to use the business applications more effectively and learn more about them. Manipulating data, it's like all you know, the business intelligence, cloud data integrations, all these things mean that you need to understand your data and where it goes. How do you get people the reports they need to do their jobs? How do you understand efficiencies? How do you do all that? By using the systems that you have and understanding how they're used in your organization and whether they're optimal or not. And automation saves money. So you need highly specific technical skills as well. I'll get to that in a minute, but it's like, it used to be you had one or two computer generalists in your organization and they kind of were pretty successful at handling everything. And now not quite the case, right? Because as I'll get to, there are a lot of different skills. Online media, I mean, it used to be you had a marketing person who handled sort of your online presence and all that kind of thing. Now that's really kind of being more of an IT function because it has to do with privacy and, you know, cybersecurity, all those kinds of things. And data privacy is huge. A lot of people talk about cybersecurity and that you're getting breached, but really, especially if you deal with any consumer information, there are like 12 states have enacted laws, 30 more will later this year. So, you know, you need somebody on your staff that understands data privacy and whether you're in compliance. All right. This support or this slide is terrible. But if you want the details of the bullet points on here, just, ask Peter or ask me or email me or follow up on an email that we follow up with you on, and you can see what all these are. But the whole point of this with big I, little t, goes back to a blog post that we've had on our website for a couple years. And this blog post is gold for us. It gets 40 or 50 hits a month from all over the world. And people are really interested in this whole concept, and somehow Google picked it up. And if you ask this question, they route you to us. I wish I could do that on every single blog we ever do, but that's Google. So the whole idea is that functional is different than technical support when it comes to IT. So functional support focuses on information, the gaps in information between systems, the outside people, the cybersecurity policies, the restriction, excuse me, of access. All of these things have to do with information. On the right side, technical support focuses on the technology, and I've talked about that way too much probably today, but that's about technical products and installing things and implementing all this stuff, like things that all businesses have to do regardless of your business mission. But on the left, functional support is all about your company. What is unique about your company, and how do you make that efficient, productive, automated? And so the right side, sorry that, when I do these, people keep texting me, telling me that they're sorry they didn't make it. So it's like my phone goes nuts. The technical support, the focus on technology is different. That's what any business needs to do. It's keeping the lights on and the doors locked. Very, very simple. It's like you don't need specific skills in-house to do that anymore. So we had this concept, and this is another really popular blog and concept that we had on our website for years, called the Picasso Man. And the point of this was legacy. So I'm using that and bringing it into today. So it used to be we would go in and say, okay, your technology support, you needed, 5% CIO, 10% IT guy, 20% administrative, 20% engineer, 30% help desk, 15% analyst, and that was kind of the old days. And a lot of small companies, and I mean small, under 200 people, had to figure out how to do all these roles without each person being full-time. So my CEO, Tim, has this whole Picasso idea that, you can't be just a regular person. You have to have faces and be all types of different people. And that was great. But now moving forward, what about cybersecurity? That adds to this whole thing. No one had to worry about that, not even 3 years ago. And I'll say that 3 years ago, people who were worried about cybersecurity were, updating their antivirus. That was about it. And things really changed. And I went through why that changed. But the point is that the old days, people had to deal with this. Now they have to deal with more than that. So I just briefly want to touch on cybersecurity and define it a little bit. Everybody knows this. You got to detect and block your threats, defend, protect, don't strain your resources, and make sure that it's appropriate for your model and industry. But really, when I think about this, when I was a kid, home security was a baseball bat next to the door. And we didn't live in a great neighborhood, so it was like a lot of people probably had no security, but you handled it yourself. Now, I mean, how many of you have Ring cameras, sensors, detectors, and attached to that is a huge call center of people just watching monitors and getting ready to call the police on your behalf or call you. And so that's the same thing that's happening in cybersecurity. And I just want to point that out. So when it comes to cybersecurity, here's what we see in terms of staffing. Cyber talent is expensive, even for us. You know, it's like somebody new in their career who's graduated from a proper college or school can make $100,000 sitting around watching computer screens. You know, I don't know that that is something that I would like to do, but it's pretty good money. So how are you going to hire somebody like that? The other thing is that the security tools now cost between $20 to $50 per user per month. It used to be, and like I said, it was only 3-4 years ago, that companies may have had, you know, antivirus on every machine. And, you know, that was $4 or $5 per machine. Then you would add to that maybe some email protection for $4 or $5 machine, something like that. You know, and depending on your business, you probably have a few other things that were built into your, you know, IT budget. Now, you know, to get that whole, we call it a stack, where you've got the call center waiting on all the alerts from your network and reacting and doing everything that you need to do, endpoint detection, response, monitoring, the whole managed security operations center. All of these cost money, and they're all priced per user per month. So somewhere in here, you can start getting the price up for every person that you have using the computer. So it's important for you to know that your costs are going to go up, and you know, you've got to figure out how to do the whole thing more perfectly and cheaper at the same time. So you can't do it yourself. Anybody who thinks that they can, you know, talk to me. Anyway, it's a 24/7 job. Who can hire somebody 24/7 at the skill levels we're talking about? And also, cyber is always evolving at a really fast pace. It's like what the criminals are doing today is not what they're going to be doing tomorrow. We all know that. So not only do you need somebody to react to the alarms, you need an alarm system. So that's where all this money is coming in. So I want to introduce what we see going on in the industry, and you may already know all this, but it's important to kind of, you know, lay it out here. I think there was a time when companies either outsourced their IT or they didn't. So under 50 people, pretty much outsourcing, right? They might have an administrator in-house who kind of managed the whole thing, but you know, you had a company that pretty much did everything. Now, companies who are in 100, 200 person size, they need their internal team. Why? Because they need to manage their own business. The left side is all about, of this diagram, is all about the unique needs of your business. If it's flavored and colored, your business, your industry, you need to handle that. And that comes down to what we've talked about, the employee training, knowing when something is wrong, being able to escalate that, having people who understand your business applications inside and out, and how you use them, maintaining policies and procedures. That's really important, especially with cyber, because we got more policies, we got more procedures. Data management, you know, maintaining data privacy, making sure that people aren't putting important data where they shouldn't be putting important data. Of course, you can have tools from your technology provider that can detect that, but you need to have those policies in place. And then the last thing is your online media. You may have somebody else doing that for you, but it's certainly part of your marketing effort, part of your branding effort, proper identification of the company. Sorry. So your outsource team needs to focus on the things, like I said, that keep the lights on, the doors locked. And that's VCIO, CISO, security officer. You know, you'll never afford one of those. The IT maturity model. You know, it's hard to develop that internally. You really can't do that. And, you know, outside companies have to do that because they're working for so many different companies. The security stack, talked about that, 24/7 monitoring, patch management, that whole thing. Who in your organization is going to do that religiously? You know, it's like they'll have the most boring job in the world, but there are companies like ours who do that on an automated basis. Remote remediation of issues, onboarding, offboarding. This is one, and I talk about this gray area because you can move these back and forth, but onboarding and offboarding of employees, and I'm not talking about getting them into the payroll system. I'm talking about how their computers are set up, how they're educated, how they understand what they're supposed to do. All of that is often outsourced now. And then IT vendor management, your internet provider, your phone provider, and all those kinds of things. It's like you don't need to have your people sitting on hold on an 800 number forever because somebody's cell phone or whatever isn't working correctly. So these co-managed relationships are varied, but you know, what works for one organization may not work for the other. But the whole concept of co-managed IT is very, very prevalent in the marketplace. All right, we're getting there. So key takeaways. I think being proactive and reactive versus reactive is the difference between failure and success. And, you know, it used to be could limp along, kind of being a reactive IT division, but cyber's changed that. It really has. As I've said, spend more on the I and less on the T. Get you a co-managed IT company that'll focus on the T, you know, on an automated and cost-effective basis. IT departments, you have heavier loads, and you may have people who are trained or have a whole history of being in IT with skills that probably aren't needed anymore. I talked about the network engineer. It's like everybody seemed to have one, but now, I don't know. Maybe you can retrain them. Maybe you can, you know, do something else. Cybersecurity is an asset, not an expense. You know, I go on and on about this. It's something that you have to have. And so you can't see it as, well, I don't know if I can pay for it this year. I mean, you may have bugs in your system, criminals in your system right now. The average time between a breach and when somebody gets in your system and they actually do something is months, because the people who get in aren't necessarily the people who take the data. You know, they'll send that ability to get into your system to the highest bidder, and that takes time. And they may wait and understand your business and when the worst time it is to attack you so that you'll pay the most money. And the last point was that co-managed IT services provide, you know, increased security, expertise, and affordability. So I saw some chats coming through. Peter, you there?
I am here. That was just me doing some housekeeping, letting anyone know if they had any questions, they could post them in the chat, and I shared your email. But you know, the floor is open for Q&A with Brian, that we have this knowledgeable partner here that's, you know, kind of giving us a peek behind the scenes of, you know, what's really going on in terms of business, how businesses view IT or should view IT to really leverage it, you know, not as a cost center, but as something that's going to really help the bottom line and really maximize that ROI from your technology.
So like I've said, you know, we have 100 people who like our series. Most get these offline, and I can see every time I have some of my friends in the industry and friends in business who show up, and I just want to say thanks for that. It helps having actual people here to be able to talk to. So, you know, we're doing our part, getting the information out there, letting the people know what we see. And it's a brave new world, and that's what we do. So people generally don't have questions, but we're using a new system for doing this. Where is it? So here's what I'm going to do.
Nice.
Dropping the mic. So if anybody has any questions, let me know, and let Peter know. Email me. Most of you know me. You know me on LinkedIn. And so if you have any questions or you think I said something wrong, let me know. So with that, Peter.
Let's see. We do have one question
No.
that came in. Are you suggesting we insource or outsource IT?
Well, I think if I go back, it's like, yeah, you need to determine the high value people that you need to know about your business, your data, your applications, your workflows, and all those kinds of things. But you should probably outsource the security, like you do with the security on your house. It's like you can't do it yourself anymore and be cost effective. So if it belongs to your business, as important to the kind of business you're in, you need to handle it. If it has to do with your data, who has your data? Where's your data? How you do that? Your outsource team can help you in the beginning, but you've got to maintain that policy. So our recommendation, it's not just our recommendation, what we're seeing in the marketplace is that IT departments have, for 100, 200 person company, have 2 or 3 people, maybe 4, depending on the complexity. And those people focus on this bubble to the left, while they have an outsourced team function on this level. And I've said this, it's different now. It's co-managed. It's like you need people in-house. So I'm big time in favor of in-house people who can talk in meetings, who are dealing with department heads, trying to understand their needs, and then using outside sources to get those things accomplished. So, and from our experience, if you're pretty highly technically skilled, you'll probably be bored doing all these items on the right for one company. You won't have enough. You won't have enough time in the day. It's going to be mundane, where the outsourced teams can handle all these kinds of things. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think just to, if I could add my 2 cents, what we're seeing too from our side in dealing with, multiple IT providers, and in their conversations with, their customers and prospects, a lot of businesses and people outside of the IT bubble kind of have this either or view of IT. It's either you're a company that has an in-house team or you're a company that has an outsourced team. And there's, like in your image here, there's a lot of gray area where those two can combine, and how much of your IT is in-house versus, that outsourced piece is really determined by your company and your goals and, kind of where you're at in the IT maturity model.
Yeah. So was that,
so that was my 2 cents on that, but we do have a couple more questions.
Yeah, the whole idea of having a template for co-management, I'll reach out to you, Devin. We do have ideas on that, but it takes you first to go in and decide what's important to your company, like we talked about, and what just keeps you safe and the computer's running and everybody happy. So and then if you're a small company and a startup, yes, you can outsource everything, and you probably won't have a lot of support issues, I mean, we see companies now that are starting up, and they're not even going into offices. They're just everything's cloud-based, everything's remote. And so in those cases, your cybersecurity and support is simplified, but you still need to have it. So yeah, it's probably, when you're small, you probably can't do a whole lot of things in either one of these bubbles. And you probably don't have to put a lot of work into it, but you still have to do these things. So again, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to, talk without, I'm not a sales guy. So, and I've been in this for 30 years. And so, and still out there in terms of the new companies that we see. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, William. All right, thanks to everybody for being here. If there's anybody else that well, Nick, good to hear from you. So, this is tough and maybe a topic on its own, because I did some consulting recently for a bank, you would know. And there are a lot of companies out there where the computer guy, the only guy 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that knew anything about personal computers has ascended to the position of CIO today. And so, I mean, that's the ultimate culture shock, right? That person is just not generally equipped for everything that they need to do. I'm sure there are exceptions to that. There are probably some people that stay up with everything, but yeah, I think the culture thing is about the structure of the IT people, and there's a lot of retiring IT people, how old we are, and a lot of people in IT from the beginning are in retirement age right now. So, and then the last thing is, we're seeing a lot of executive management from people who are, 30 to 45, 50, have very different ideas about things. They didn't see necessarily the server rooms or pay attention. They may not have, certainly didn't see the ashtrays on the conference room table. So, things are changing as far as that's concerned. So all I can say, that's why we do these things, Nick, is to try to, educate people and show what we see in the marketplace. So I talked to a lot. I just went to a conference near Dulles at the Hilton last week, which was a whole bunch of outsourced IT companies like mine. There were probably 100 there. And, we had all talked about these kinds of things. And that's where this information comes from. It's not just me saying what we want to do. It's what the industry is doing and how they're responding to the changes that we see in IT today.
Okay. Would you rather me be off mute?
Yeah, man. Tell me how you been.
Okay. Well, did I just lose my picture? Okay. I did that, I guess. Yeah, I'm well, but what I found is ironic for those that are the older technologists that have stayed current. I look at it through a different prism, that technology hit the technology businesses as we were going through it. And so a man year, as we know, might have started a year and it ended up 3 months before you had to learn something new, right?
Yeah.
But then technology hit the non-technology companies that weren't used to having to learn something new every 3 to 6 months. And so what I'm getting at, where I am now in Florida, understanding it's not emotional, it's about requirements. Is what, right, Brian, is what we all learn as you're going through the process, and just capture them and make sure you've captured them so that you, as you evolve, it's not emotional any way you look at it. So I found on the functional side, the resistance to the change, to the technology, because they're looking at the technology not the solution that you extract through understanding requirements and understanding that technology is just a tool. It's just a hammer. Right?
Yeah, it's you hit it. Speaking of hammers, you hit it on the head. I remember it's like there's a difference between, I'm an Indy 500 fan. I grew up in Indianapolis, and I've been to more races. I've been to half of them.
Okay. Yeah, I went to
You
one.
know,
And I'm still deaf from it.
so, today, you want drivers. Businesses want fast drivers.
Right.
The mechanics can work on the technology and the tools and all that kind of thing, but it's important that on your team you have people that can really use it and really race
Right.
it. And so I hear you, man. You hit it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
on the other side is the technology guys. A lot of them do get emotional, or they get protective.
Right.
And the whole compliance thing is going to really crush that, because either you do it well or you don't. And it's like, you have to prove that now, right? It used to be you didn't have to do that. It was like, trust me. Trust me's gone.
Right. Right. Keeping that balance between compliance and compelling, whether it's writing a proposal or delivering the product. Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So you're in Florida?
I live in South Florida. Yes. I'm right down in Palm Beach County. Yes. And as you see, doing the consult there, and also digital inclusion direction for a very large nonprofit here, as you see, Community Partners of South Florida, to close the technology vulnerability gap. So I'm really focused on workforce development and really try to close and make sure that there's actually a middle class in Palm Beach County.